So today we're going to make some huckleberry jam, and we're going to start with the hardest part, which is gathering the huckleberries. It's good to have a little helper along to kind of keep you company because gathering huckleberries takes a long time. You can see she's going to participate here, but all right, you don't have to participate that much. You can see that they are very small berries. All right, Mary, that's good. They're very small berries, and they take a long time to pick. So we're going to start by picking the berries, and then we'll move into the kitchen. I'll show you how to make the jam. I've already started here, and it's going to take me an hour or two to get the right amount of berries. I want to start by getting about 4 cups of berries into this bowl, and that's probably going to take me a good hour to get the berries. They're very small, and you just kind of roll them off like this. They're a little bit harder to pick than blueberries, but they make really good jam. And we will move into the kitchen, and I'll show you how to do that without using any pectin or unnatural products and less sugar, and you'll have a really good jam product when we're done. So let's get picking now, and I'll see you in the kitchen in a little while. Okay, so I've been picking now for a while, and you can see that there's still some berries left on here, but I've gotten most of them off. And I've now got about 4 or 5 cups of berries in here, maybe 6, we'll see. And that's plenty of berries for the jam I'm going to make. And so let's go back to the kitchen now. Mary, it's time to go back inside. So in we go and make the jam, and I'll show you what we're going to do when we get to the kitchen. So the first thing we're going to do when we get back to the kitchen is wash the berries really good. And to do that, I'm just going to add water to them and stir them around a little bit, and what we're going to find is a lot of the leaves and unripe berries and woody matter that doesn't go with the berries is going to float to the top. And before I go any further, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean that off with a skimmer and just save the berries. And then I'm going to sort them through and pick out any green ones that came along so that I have just plain berries. So I finished washing the berries and put them in a cup to measure them. And you can see that I've got just a little bit over 4 cups, about 4.5 cups of berries. And I'm going to add to that a little bit of plums, dark purple plums, 2 small dark purple plums, because huckleberries don't have a lot of pectin and we need to add some, and plums do. So we're going to add just a little bit of plums in there, and that's going to create just a little bit over 4.5 cups of fruit. So to that, we're going to add 3 cups of sugar. And again, you can see that this is 3 cups here. I use these cups so you can sort of measure them on the side, which is really easy to work with. And the reason we do that is I like to put in 40% fruit and 60% fruit and 40% sugar to get the best flavor out of it, and that makes a really good jam. And we're going to be adding a little bit of plums cut up, and we're going to add just a little bit of lemon juice as well, and that's it. But next I'm going to prepare the bottles, and I'll show you how I do that in just a minute. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is get out the jars. Now for this much jelly, it's going to make about 5 jelly jars worth of jam, but it could make a little more than that. So I'm going to prepare 6 jars. And to do that, I use the Kerr dimpled jelly jars. They're really easy. Some of them are left over from last year, some of them are new. And I get them out, and the first thing I do is I'm going to wash them, and then I'm going to put them in a boiling water bath in order to make sure that they're nice and sterile before I want to use them. And I'm going to prepare my jars before I start making my jelly. Okay, so I've got the jars washed, and I've put them in the canner I'm going to use. This is a pressure canner, but you certainly don't need to use a pressure canner. And they're immersed, and they're covered by about 1 inch of water, and they're fully in water. And I'm going to bring this to a boil and boil it for about 5 minutes, and that's going to sterilize the jars. And I'm doing the same with the tops. And I've just put them in a pot and covered them with water and bring them to a boil. And that's going to sterilize them as well. Now for the canning, you really don't need a lot of tools. I use 3 different tools. One is a jar lifter, and this just lifts my jars so I don't get burnt. This one is a jar closer. You'll see how I use this, but I put this around the jar, and then I can close the top really tightly, again without holding it while it's hot and getting burnt. And finally, this is a jar lifter. It's got a little magnet on the end, and it pulls out the lids from the boiling water so that I don't have to touch them and get them contaminated. And this all costs, I don't know, $3.50, $4. Pretty cheap to buy, and it's really all you need to can. I've had my set for 5 years, 7 years, and I just use it over and over again. It cleans up easily and gets put away. All right, so now we'll get started with the jam. Itself, I like to use an enamel pot, just simply because it doesn't react with anything, and I've used this pot for a long time. It's a great size for making jelly, because you can see it's not very big, and it makes one batch of jelly really nicely. You don't want to double up your batches of jelly. It just makes them harder. And the only thing you're going to need with this is a spoon to stir, and I like to use both a metal spoon and a wooden spoon, and we're going to get going with it right away. I'm going to dump all my berries into this jar, and that's it. Now I like this kind of induction type heater because you can keep the temperature just exactly the way you want it, and you'll see that I can actually set the temperature by temperature on it. And I'm going to start these out at a pretty low temperature at 170 degrees, but that's a very low simmer because I don't want to add any water to it other than the water they were rinsed in. And this will allow them to start cooking from the very bottom without burning and bring all the juice out of the berries. And that's going to take 5 or 10 minutes. So we'll get back to that once it gets boiling. Starting to cook up. I'm getting these plums ready, and I'm going to just take 2 very small plums. They're not quite fully ripe yet, which is perfect because they're going to have a little more pectin. And I'm going to cut those up into really small pieces and add those to the fruit. That's going to add pectin to it and a little bit of flavor, a little bit of extra sweetness, but it's really not going to affect the taste of the jam. And it's going to make a really good jam, and as it cooks, it's going to cook down completely. You won't even know it's there. Now you can see I've diced these up pretty small, and I'm going to go ahead and put these right into the jam that we're making with the huckleberries so they can cook up with the huckleberries. And that's going to give us our pectin, and it's going to give us a little extra flavor, and we're going to have great jam. Now I'm also going to take a little bit of lemon juice, and so for that I'm going to squeeze a lemon, and I'm only going to use about 2 tablespoons worth, so it doesn't take very much lemon, half a lemon or so to get what I need. There's my lemon juice squeezed and ready to go in, and that goes right in with the jam as well. And now I'm ready to stir and let that come to a boil, and I want to do that slowly so we don't burn it. And I haven't put in the sugar yet. That's the next step. So here we go. So now I'm going to show you this with a wooden spoon, and I stir it. It's at 220. It's been boiling about 10 minutes, and I'm going to pick up some juice, and you're going to see how the 2 drops come together as one, and then string off the spoon like that. See how that happens? That's what we want. That's exactly what we want. See how those 2 drops are coming together? And gonna pull away from the spoon like that. That's what we want. That tells us that our jam is about ready, and it's not going to get too much hotter than this because I've got it set for 220. See how those 2 drops come together and come off? That's what we want. One more time. Let's see if we can make it do it. One more time. Yeah. Oh, that's very good. Yeah. And you see how that sort of sticks and holds. It doesn't keep dropping. That's because as it cools, it's beginning to thicken a little bit. And that's, oh, see those 2 come together really well. Still got 2 drops side by side. So it can maybe go just a minute longer. This is the hard part of making the jam, but it's definitely, there we go. Those two drops are coming together pretty much as one and pulling away. It's going to make a nice jam right now. I don't want to turn it up too much more because there we go. See how that pulls away like that? That was a beautiful one. Yeah, that's good. That's what we want. All right, so I think this jam is done and it's ready to put in jars. And that's our next thing. Now, one other way I test it is I leave the spoon that's been cooled and I feel that, and you can see, if you see how that comes away, that's already started to cool, and in fact it's turned into jam. So this is ready, and I'm going to turn this off so it doesn't overcook, and now it's ready to put into jars. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and I'm going to take a jar out, dump the water back into the pot, and put it right here in front. Put a funnel into the jar so we don't get the top of the jar wet. And again, this came with my canning kit. The whole thing cost probably, I don't know, $6 or $7 at the most, and definitely worth it. And then ladle it into the jar. Very easy to do, and I want to ladle it in until it's about right to the bottom of the funnel, or about 1/4 of an inch from the top of the jar. So you can't really see it at the bottom. And then I'm going to take another jar. All right, dump the water out. All right, put the jar over there next to it. Move the funnel into there. Make sure that I don't have any dirt around the top of the jar, and I don't. And then I'm going to take a lid out, and there we go. Hang on. All right, come on. The lids are not being cooperative today. There we go. All right, I'm going to take a lid out. You can see that it sticks right on there. I'm going to put the lid right on top, like that. Not touch it. And then I'm going to take a top out. Now the top we don't need to worry quite so much about. I'm going to put that on. I'm going to put this around it like this. And then with my other hand, I'm going to screw it down tight so that it just has a natural tightness to it. We don't want it super tight, but tight enough that the lid's going to seal on it. And then I'll show you what we'll do next. So now that lid is screwed down tight, I'm going to take it, I'm going to just place it back in the boiling water so that it's covered. Once I get all of these in there, I'm going to basically bring it back to a boil and boil it for about just 2 or 3 minutes, just enough to keep them hot, and then we'll be done. And I'll come back and show you what we do then. Today this actually made 6 full jars, which is great. And I've put these back in the boiling water, and you see that the water's covering them. And I'm actually going to take a little of that water out because I only wanted to cover it by about 1 inch, and it's got 2 inches over, so it's going to actually boil out of the pot if I'm not careful. And I'm going to boil those, bring those back to a boil, and boil them, but only for about 2 or 3 minutes. I just want to get the temperature up and get any air that's trapped in the top out of those covers, and then they're ready to seal. And I'll pull them out and put them on that white cloth over there. I do that so that they won't crack when they hit the cold granite. And then they're just all ready to cool, and we'll have jelly. So I'll show you me pulling out one in a couple of minutes, and then we're done. This is just coming to a boil now. You can see the little air bubbles escaping from the jars, and that's because it's pushing up and pushing that air underneath the jar lid, and you can see that one in particular just escaping a little bit, and you can see some of the others doing the same thing where little bubbles are coming out. And you don't need a lot of that, and you really don't want it to overcook. So I'm about ready to take this out. You don't really need to do much of this because the jelly's pretty hot by itself, and when it cools it's going to pull the lid in. That air is going to contract and it's going to pull the lid in on itself. So I think these are ready, and it's just starting to boil, the water is. So from my point of view, that's ready. It's going to be nice and sanitary, and we're going to have a good seal on that
they'll keep for several years if you need.
Okay, so now it's done, and I'm gonna take them out, just dump the water off a little bit, and just place them over here like this on this soft cloth. And we're gonna do that with all of them, and they're gonna cool, and then the only thing I have to do is really label them, and they'll be done. I want to leave enough space in between so that they'll have lots of air circulating around them. And you can see when I turn it in the jar, it's pretty juicy inside. I mean, it doesn't look like jelly, but once it cools, it's going to be a really nice jelly. Okay, so there we have our jars of jelly waiting. If we're lucky, we're going to hear it pop. One of them already popped as the jars totally seal, and each one of them make a loud pinging noise, and then you'll know it's sealed for sure. Okay, so we're all done. I've made my labels, and I'm going to take these labels off and stick them on the side of the jars, and we'll be all finished. So there we go. The jars are all labeled and ready to cool and be nice, firm jars of jelly. Let's see how we're doing so far. Well, you can see already it now barely moves at all, and that's what we want it to do, and that's how we know that it's good jelly. So, hope you enjoyed this little demonstration of how to make huckleberry jam. Until next time.